of use a condom, don't screw around, all the HIV messaging that we've had has been going, and you've all grew up with it. Hana, 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 hana. You probably saw me on TV for the last 10 years screaming and shouting, condoms, condoms, condoms. Truth is, people are not using them. People are choosing to have sex. People are choosing to have unprotected sex. Therefore, the only conclusion I can draw is they are choosing to become HIV positive. So if you're choosing that choice, then let us help you live as a positive and a good role model as an HIV positive person. I also believe that people who are not coming forward and getting tested are choosing to commit suicide. Now that sounds a little harsh too, but the reality is we've got the tests, we've got the medication, we've got everything we need to support you in staying alive, to raise your family and die when you're 90 years old of a heart attack. If you choose not to come forward and access that care, what conclusion can I draw? You want to die. Well, okay, if you want to die, I can play either game. I can help you live and I can help you die. Which one do you want to do? Because I'm not going to sit on the fence. Tell me what it is you want and I'll support you in that process. If you want to live, there are ways on how you do that. Talking of which, on your P drive, your internal drive, all of our books are on there. Positive health, choices, sex secrets, it's all on there now. So you guys have a huge resource that you can tap into. And feel free to share that information with your clients. Happy to help with that. Okay. Does that answer the question? Does that answer your question? Come, more. Go.
What are the challenges of HIV in SA?
Be more specific.
Yeah. What are the problems like most of the people encounter of being HIV positive in South Africa?
I think most of it's internal stigma. I mean, I don't personally experience stigma. I don't understand what everyone's going off about. I think stigma's now become the excuse as to why things don't work. Oh, stigma, you know, put it under that big blanket and, you know, it's all sorted. I think it's the internal stigma, believing that I did something wrong, that I was a bad person, that I deserved to get this is God's punishment, I was a slut, I was a whore, whatever. It's the self-perception. And I think the stigma is self-stigma, and that is simply projected out to other people. I think the problem with those individuals, I think if I stood up here and I said, hi, my name's David and I'm an AIDS sufferer, you'd probably want to throw something at me. I would want to throw something at me. People will treat me the way I teach them to treat me. So if I stand up here and I claim the fact that I'm a man living with HIV, and quite honestly, I don't give a rat's ass what you think about me. It's not important. What I think about me is more important. If we can pass that on to other HIV positive people, that there's nothing wrong with you, you're not broken, you didn't do anything wrong, you simply happen to get a disease. When you get a flu, do you ask who gave it to you? Do you? Flu can kill you. Hepatitis, do you ask who gave you hepatitis? Hepatitis can kill you. All these other things can kill you, but we're not interested in who gave it to you and did you get revenge. You know? The reality is there are two people in a sexual relationship, and both of you have to make a choice or a decision. And you can choose to either follow conventional wisdom, or you can choose to try and do your own thing. Understand clearly that there will be consequences. However, HIV is a very difficult disease to get. Now, how bizarre is that? Did you know that most people who are HIV positive are not spreading the virus? So who is spreading the virus? When are you the most contagious? Come on, you're the experts. When you're first infected in the window period. As luck would have it, we had an artist come in a little earlier and draw up a plan. This is a graph, CD4 count, timeline, 0 to 8 years. Red represents viral load infection. Green represents window period. Blue represents CD4 count. During the initial window period, you are testing HIV negative. Despite the fact you have more virus in your sexual fluids and your blood than you will ever have for the rest of your infection living with HIV. You are the most contagious in the first 3 to 6 weeks of your own infection. How contagious? At your peak, 1 in 3 sexual acts. Not 1 in 3 sexual partners, 1 in 3 sexual acts. As your body starts to wake up and your CD4s come alive and realize that there's a problem after the window period, they get control of the immune system. They start to force down the amount of virus in the blood and the sexual fluids, follow the red line, And as you go down and the CD4s start to wake up, the risk of transmission of infection is 1 in 10, 1 in 25, 1 in 100. And for the majority of my life living with HIV, the risk of me transmitting the virus is 1 in 1,000 sexual acts. So what does this actually mean? And then of course, as if there was no antiretrovirals, round about year number 6, year number 7, statistically speaking, my CD4 count is going to decline, my viral load is going to start to increase, and so will the risk of spreading infection. CD4s do nothing when it comes to transmission of virus. It is all around the viral load. You keep the viral load undetectable, that person cannot transmit infection. End of story. Which is why people like me can safely have children without any problems at all. No risk of infection to my partner, no risk of infection to the child. Make sense? And that's why you see what we call discordant couples. You'll see where the one couple has died from HIV, you're burying them, they've had unprotected sex with their partner, but their partner tests negative. Why is that? Simply luck. During the time when they were having sex, their partner was not transmitting the virus. Now, the only thing that is going to cause this to spike at any point during this period is if I get any kind of secondary infection. Now, what's a secondary infection? It can be a flu. It could be parasites in my stomach. Anything that is going to divert the attention of my immune system. Let me explain to you how the immune system works very quickly. Imagine your immune system as a scale. And you've got two sides to the immune system. You've got your Th1 and you've got your Th2. Th1 takes care of anything that happens inside the cell. It's called intracellular. So a disease comes in, or a virus usually, comes in, it gets inside the cell, like HIV, and it starts to cause damage within inside the cellular structure. That's Th1. So your HIV, your cancer, that will exist on this side of the immune system. Then you've got your Th2, which is everything else that attacks the cell from the outside. So it's extracellular. Parasites, bacteria, protozoa, all those kinds of things exist in the Th2. Now, there's one cell in your body that is the master cell that decides what's going to happen. And unfortunately, it's a man, and it cannot multitask. It can only do one thing at a time. So the CD4 looks, now here we are, HIV, pause, and I have worms in my stomach. The CD4 looks at the HIV, the CD4 looks at the worms, and it says, where should I put all my resources? It's going to put all its resources on what it perceives to be the big problem. So it diverts all the energy away from the Th1 side of the immune system and puts all of its resources into the Th2 side of the immune system, which means what's happening over here. Come on, you bright people. It's like leaving the children at home on the weekend and going away. All right? This side starts to party down. So the key in your work with your clients is anything to do with primary health care, get treatment. Don't bugger around, especially the men. The men will wait until their tootie will be falling off before they show up at the clinic. Ladies, you guys are accustomed to going to the clinic. You've been going there since the time you started having your period, so you're accustomed to what's going on. Men are not. The clinics are not friendly towards men. So we now have to start encouraging men to start stepping forward and doing things like treating the Th2. If we treat this, the CD4s will take care of this. You ask me how I stayed alive as long as I did before antiretrovirals? Simply using this knowledge. Keeping my stomach clean, making sure that if I have a cold or a flu that I treat it immediately. Any kind of infection, treat it immediately. Don't bugger around and waste time with it. And giving my body all the resources that it needs, the selenium, the zinc, the beta-carotene, the iron, all of those things that are going to help my immune system do its job properly. The nice thing about the immune system is it will do its job if you give it the resources. When you deprive it of the resources, it will not do its job properly anymore. And most people deprive it quite simply because they don't know what to eat. You know, we'll have a bowl of pap, and we'll have a bit of meat and a leaf of lettuce, and that we will say is a balanced diet. That is not balanced, that's crap food, all right? Rather focus on eating the things that you're going to need to get your body working, which is the selenium, the zinc, the beta-carotene, and the iron. Find the foods that are going to give those to you. Rather eat the food, because your body digests a food differently than it does a pill. So when you're talking to your clients, don't say to them, well, rush out to the local store and buy blah, blah, and blah, blah. Rather, go to fruit and veg and get this, or rather grow this in your garden. Start educating people. They've got to eat, so if you're going to eat, why not eat good food? Don't eat this nonsense that most people are throwing down and saying, oh, I eat a balanced diet. Okay. Come, more questions.
So, sorry. So
Okay,
with
sorry.
that, looking at that graph, the CD4 count keeps going down.
Yeah.
But this is going to be direct to you.
All right.
When I looked at your CD4 count was doing this.
All over.
Yeah, when you started, or when you found out that you were infected. Was it because you were testing at different times, or were you doing something else? And what
I was doing a lot of drugs. I was doing a lot of drugs. All right, so I was in party mode during the early years, during the 360 to the 500 range. It wasn't until I quit all the cocaine and the partying and all the rest of it. Keeping in mind, when I was diagnosed, there wasn't a David patient that came and told me, oh, this is how you do things. I was case like 360-something. So there wasn't a whole lot of us around. There was no resources. So we all believed that we were going to die. So my philosophy, I was 22 years old. So my thing was, oh, well, I'll party till I drop. Give me another line. Let's go have some fun. So I was doing a whole bunch of really detrimental things to my body, not fully aware of the consequences. And it wasn't until I sobered up and decided that I wanted to live and I was going to do whatever I could to live that I started focusing on, okay, what can I do? The most powerless moment is when you sit there and the doctor says to you, you've got this thing that's going to kill you and there's nothing we can do. Do you know how powerless that is? I mean, I can't begin to explain to you that feeling. And I just thought, you know what, screw it. There's got to be something I can do. There have always been people who have survived. If you look at any of the holocausts or genocide or plagues or any of the natural disasters in the world, there's always one or two people who've lived to tell their story. And I made a conscious decision that I was going to be one of those people who would live to tell my story. And hopefully, I will talk about AIDS in the past tense in the next 15 to 20 years of a time when there was a disease called AIDS. And that's what I'm working towards. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. But then again, I saw that it picked up very high to 1,000 even before you started ARVs. So it was, yeah.
Started changing my mindset, started changing how I was behaving, started exercising, started slowing down on the partying and the drinking and all those kinds of things. So you could see it. You could literally see how, I mean, at one point, I went above normal human range. I went up to 2002, I think it was, or 2004. That was in 1992, 1991, somewhere around there, which is interesting because I was in an incredibly traumatic period in my life, and yet my immune system was the strongest it's ever been. So, and that's all about what the mind can do. It doesn't matter what pills you take, it doesn't matter what exercising you do. If the mind is not right, nothing you do is going to make any difference. And I think a large part of the role you guys play is there to reinforce, hey, you've got a long, normal life ahead of you. Don't do stuff to screw it up. Do stuff to stay around so you can see your children graduate and you can build that home and you can have all those dreams. Because one of the things that happens when a person's told they're HIV positive is they see their future go out the door. Suddenly, I'm going to be dead in 6 months and that's it. And that's nonsense. However, people who believe it can talk themselves to death. I've seen it happen a lot. Okay, HIV is not a death sentence anymore. Only for those people who choose it. There was another hand up. Come, more questions, guys.
David, you said you were diagnosed when you were 22 years.
Actually, on my 22nd birthday. Happy birthday to me.
And then after that, do you have children? Do you have children now?
I've never had any of my own kids, no.
You don't
I've
have.
adopted, but I haven't had any of my own children.
And then are you married?
I am, yes.
With your, I'm sorry to ask you, with your wife, are you using condoms or?
My wife is 20 years older than me now, so no, we don't even have sex anymore, so no. It's not an issue anymore. But when we were sexually active, yes, condoms were always used. Although I don't need to use them anymore today if I didn't want to, because I have no virus in my seminal fluid.
No, what I want to know is that a lot of people are saying that when you are on ARVs, you don't get reinfected. How true is that?
Well, there's no such thing as reinfection, first of all. There's this myth. If I was to reinfect me, I would have to have sex with me. All right? Because my virus is specific to me. My virus is like your fingerprint and my fingerprint. We're both human beings. We both have a lot of similarities, but there are some very, very different features that we have. Imagine HIV's last name is Zuma. If we look up Zuma in the phone book, how many Zumas are we going to find? we're going to fill up the stadium with Zoomers. All right? But every single one of those Zoomers is a completely different person. The only thing they have in common is they have the same last name. HIV is exactly the same. It is as different as you and I are from each other. But we're both human beings. We're both part of the human species. We've got a lot of things in common, but we also have a lot of differences as well. HIV is different by about 30% in terms of its structure from one person to another person. So to reinfect myself, I would have to have sex with me. To get a co-infection would be your virus looks like this, my virus looks like this, you are constantly giving me your virus. My body, Th1, is already fighting this specific virus. With you giving me a secondary infection, you're now putting more stress on my immune system, and my immune system is only set up to deal with this virus, not this virus. So I'm creating an additional burden on my immune system. So this idea that people who are positive and not on antiretrovirals and who have not got an idea of their viral load, once again, it all boils down to viral load. If I have an undetectable viral load, the condom can come off. There is no risk of transmission, all right? It's down to about less than 6%, and it's only certain kind of sexual behaviors and in certain populations that you see transmission of virus. In the mainstream heterosexual model of HIV in Africa, if a person is on antiretrovirals and they have no viral load or undetectable viral load, they can safely have children because they are not transmitting the virus. They are also not co-infecting their partner with another strain. Does it answer your question? Okay, there's a lot of myths around this disease that people don't know. Okay, come, let's have some more questions. How about somebody from over here?
Sorry.
Have to take pulses to see who's alive. Yes.
You've touched on it, but I want to know more about what a person goes through or their feelings when they find out they are HIV positive.
I think the first thing that happens is their future goes out the window. I think there's very few people who find out with a surprise. Most people kind of suspect in some way, shape, or form, because we all know that if you've had 1 or 2 sexual encounters that were not safe with 1 or 2 people, and most of us have, there's a possibility. So there's always that thing in the back of the mind. It's like the moment of truth when you're standing at the aeroplane door and the door's open, you've got a parachute and it's 35,000 feet drop. Do you jump or don't you jump? It's a moment of truth. And it's a very, very scary moment of truth. And those of you that have not tested, I strongly urge you to go and get tested. Number 1, for your own peace of mind. But number 2, when you speak to the clients, you're speaking not of a theoretical understanding, you're speaking from a first-hand experience. And one of the things that I, as a positive person, want to know is that I'm talking to somebody who has kind of walked a similar walk to me. You've sat there, you've had the test, you had to wait the 20 minutes, it was nerve-wracking, you didn't sleep, blah, blah. I want to know that you've gone through that experience too, because it's going to make the information you give to me that much more valuable, and I can take ownership of it. So I strongly urge you, if you have not been tested, go and get tested. You can speak from first-hand experience. It also may just save your life. In terms of what they're going to go through, they're going to go through 5 different stages, and not in any specific order. Denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. Those are the stages they go through. On average, it takes 6 weeks. For the first 6 weeks after a person has been diagnosed, do nothing. Don't go, oh, shame, they're there. None of that nonsense. Just let them be, all right? They're in shock. They're going to go through a process where in time they're going to get to a point where they're going to start to accept what is going on. They're going to go through a wide range of emotions. Just stand there and create a safe enough space to let them go through that process. Don't try and fix them. They're not broken. They're just trying to make sense of what's going on. After about 6 weeks, you can start sitting down now and having conversations. And the very first conversation you have with them is, do you want to live or do you want to die? Because that's going to determine how we go from this point forward. No, I want to live. Okay. Are you willing to do what it's going to take to live? Yes. The first thing I want you to do is plan your funeral. What? The first thing I want you to do is to plan your funeral. Because there's no way you can fully embrace life until you've accepted the possibility that you could die. There's 2 types of realistic thinking. There's what they call positive denialism, and then there's realistic thinking. Positive denialism is I'm HIV positive, but la 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 la, I'll just ignore it and it'll go away. That's positive denial. That's very, very dangerous. Positive realistic is, hey, I've got this thing called HIV. There's a possibility that I could die. There's a possibility that I could live. So I need to plan on both of those possibilities. And there is nothing more liberating, And if those of you who have not done it, you will not know what the hell I'm talking about. But there is nothing more liberating than planning your own funeral, writing your own will, trying out the coffin you want to be buried in, going through that entire process, picking out the music, the clothing, the whole tutti. Why? Because you have handled your death. You've confronted your fear of death. And what happens? Once you've confronted your fear of death, it opens you up to embrace life. It is an incredibly liberating experience. So, how do you deal with the positive person? Ask them what they need and ask them how they can help themselves get it. Don't fix them, they're not broken. If they want to cry, let them cry. Getting into blame and the shame and all that stuff, try and talk your clients out of that. I mean, it doesn't change anything. Who infected you is not going to stop or change the fact that you are infected. Getting revenge is not going to take the virus out of your body and everything returns back to normal the way it was. So we need to start educating people. We need to start having a lot more courageous conversations. What's happened is we tend to be too politically correct. We tend to pussyfoot around issues, and we tend not to want to offend people's sensibilities. Well, I'm sorry, I find people dying very offensive. I find people dying, leaving their children to become orphans, incredibly offensive. I find the crime that we have today, because of the amount of orphaned children, because their parents wouldn't go and get tested, I find that incredibly offensive. So if you find me offensive, screw you. I find the whole thing wholly offensive. People should not be dying in their 20s. So we need to start having more honest conversations with people. Let's cut the crap and start talking honestly. Makes sense? Cool. Yes?
There's this huge perception that HIV and AIDS is mostly on the disadvantaged community compared to the elite community. On your experience, how do you
Is there any evidence to
change?
support it?
Yes. How do you change that perception to level the understanding of HIV as HIV and AIDS, not to make it seem like it's for
It's a
certain
poverty
type of
issue,
people?
yeah.
Yes.
Reality is the poorer a person is, the less access to good nutrition they've had. That's going to impact on their immune system. So their starting point is already a compromised immune system. They haven't had access to clean water. They haven't had access to good medical care. So those things definitely play a key role. They are not determinants as to whether a person becomes positive or not. They are merely indicators. We see as many people in the rural community who are living on social grants of 230 Rand a month for their child grant as we do government officials who are high-ranking diplomats. Same percentage of HIV, it doesn't differ. In fact, the wealthier you are, the more at risk you are for HIV. Because the more money you've got, the more mobile you are. The more mobile you are, the less chance you have of wife number 1, number 2, number 3 following you. So you can start shopping around for wife number 4 and number 5. All right? It's like cell phones. You know, there's your contract, which is your wife. There's your top-up, which is your mistress. And then you've got your pay-as-you-go. The girlfriend. All right? So we just need to get to that point where we start educating people that HIV does not discriminate. Just because you've got a nice BMW and you travel internationally and blah, 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 and you've got some poor relative living in Babanango somewhere, bottom line is the differences between the two of you are none. If you are sexually active and you come across HIV, there's a strong possibility you will get infected. It is not a class disease. And people have tried to turn it into a class disease. And it's about the poor rural people. No, it's not. The rural people actually have more going for them than the people in the cities. At least the rural people have got land, they can grow things, they can help themselves, they can be empowered. I feel sorry for the people living in the block of flats here. They can't do a whole hell of a lot to help themselves. So, yeah, well, there's fruit and veg, exactly. But don't go waste your money in buying your things at Pick and Pay and places like that, or Woolworths. I know the Woolies crowd is sitting over here, I can see the looks, right? Why am I saying that? Now, I've got no problem. Woolworths is one of my clients. I just want to explain to you what happens. That tomato that you bought this weekend, that tomato was actually picked about 7 months ago. It was cryogenically frozen while it was still green until such time as they realized they were going to need it in about 3 weeks' time for the Musgrave Woolworths. So what did they do? They took it out of the cryogenic freezing. They put it into another chamber where they forced gases into it to force it to ripen. So it has no nutritional value at all. The tomato that your neighbor grew and used chicken shit that she put around it in her garden, and it's got a couple of spots on it. It doesn't look so lekker. That one is a much better tomato for you than the expensive $15.95 a kilo that you just bought at Woolworths. So if you can grow your own vegetables, anything that is sun-ripened has way more nutritional value than something that is cryogenically frozen, gassed, and forced to ripen. When you get the avocados and you pick them off the trees and you wrap them up in brown paper and you stick them away in the cupboard for a month, all right? It tastes lekker, but it has no nutritional value. You'd be much better off leaving it, letting it get a little bit fraught on the tree and taking it off the tree and eating it when it's soft. The problem is the damn monkeys get to it before you do. Bastards. I know, I've got an avocado farm. It's a nightmare. Does that answer your question? Oh, good, one from this side. Yay.
What would you say are one of the best ARVs on the market?
It's not one, it's combinations. It all depends on what level you enter in at. I mean, I can't say to somebody, oh, you know what, you should try this, it's a great brand. Right? It all depends on what's going on with that person's histology, what's going on with their blood counts. And from that, we will determine whether they go on entry level, whether they go on stage 2, stage 3 salvage therapy. It all depends on the histology of the individual. So I'm not going to go, oh, get AZT, get on AZT, it's good shit, good shit. No, I'm not pushing the stuff.
But I mean, in terms of like side effects, like, a lot of clients say
First line is the best. First line is the best. Second line, you've got a few side effects, the dryness in the mouth, possible diarrhea once in a while, maybe a feeling of indigestion. Line number 3, now you're starting to talk about the lipodystrophy, you're starting to talk about chronic headaches, you're starting to talk about the wasting of the muscles, those kinds of things. So it all depends on which level you enter at. Once again, going back to encouraging your clients, which is good for you guys, because most of your clients already know their status. They've come to you for insurance. Now you're helping them in their adherence. So you monitor them and say, listen, you're at about 400, 500. You now need to start having the conversation. Within the next 6 months or so, you're probably going to need to go on antiretrovirals. Oh, no, I don't want to go on. I don't want to go on. Do you want to live or do you want to die? Because if you don't go on, there's a strong possibility you won't be around in 5 years' time to see your children grow up. Use guilt. Guilt's a wonderful, wonderful tool.